you ready to raise your game at Fork Union Military Academy? Sometimes described as the West Point of high schools, Fork Union is a leading college preparatory Christian boarding school for young men grounded in the structure of discipline of the traditional military academy model, and scholarships are available. Fork Union Military Academy's athletic program has produced hundreds of college and professional athletes, including 6 Olympians, 2 Heisman Trophy winners, and more than 120 NFL players. Fork Union Military Academy is a private school and is independent of any direct military affiliation or obligation. Schedule a tour and get started on your journey today by visiting forkunion.com. Fork Union Military Academy. Body, mind, spirit.
Welcome to Hingham and Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast, your destination for all things lacrosse. I'm your host, Kyle Devitte. We got Owen Hart across the interwebs. We are in the thick of our seasons, in a good way and maybe some not so good ways. Owen, how are we doing today?
I was looking at it because I had my schedule printed out on my fridge because I'm that guy, weirdo in the 21st century, so print stuff out. I'm like, we're a third of the way through the season. It doesn't feel like, I feel like it just started. It's a third through. I played 6 out of 18 games. And that means coming up is the April break week, which is the best week for Massachusetts lacrosse because have 9 million out of conference games. And that's the kind of the line of demarcation of, who sits where in the hierarchy. I love April break week in lacrosse. It's the best.
You know how I know you're about a third done? The preps are half done. Do you know how crazy that is?
Hearing that line, I didn't realize that.
Also, college was half done like last month.
I don't want to talk about college because my Heels took a bad loss to the Irish last week, so that was tough.
Yeah, I am vindicated for my number one vote for the Notre Dame.
Yeah,
last week it was just me and Dan Arestia. We confirmed it. We talked to a couple people because there's only like 19 dudes that vote in the poll, and we were like, got it. So we feel pretty good about it. Sorry that your team had taken out there.
Fine.
All right, let's bring in our guest, Kings Youth Director, Chris McGuirk. What's up, man? How you doing?
What's happening, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to have you on. We had a little bit of a discussion, about your sons who play lacrosse, and I try to spotlight the seniors and that I like for certain positions. You had some kind words for some of the stuff I've written, and I was like, I think that guy's a director at a club. I should probably bring him on and get his perspective, and not just a director of high school or anything like that. You're the youth director at Kings, and I wanted to have you on specifically to talk a little bit about youth lacrosse, more so than the next level club that everyone kind of talks about, because youth development is, if you haven't been involved in it, and I don't know if you've seen headlines, youth development is now a huge part of the sporting landscape in a business sense, as well as a altruistic sense in making kids better. And I wanted to kind of bring you on and talk to you a little bit about that. But also, before we do that, I want to talk about your background, right? You're a Thayer through and through guy.
Yeah. Back in the 90s. Yeah.
And played at UVM. Can you talk about what was different back then compared to now? Wow, great job, Kyle. Compared to now, I saw you laugh, Owen. I can't.
Yep.
I get it. Yeah, you can either cut that out or keep it in. It's funny either way. How things are different, back then, as opposed to now in terms of both development in the preps and high schools and college as well.
I mean, how about one word, everything? I grew up, I was a youth player or a youth athlete in the 80s, right? My freshman year at Thayer was 91. I grew up in Norwell. I live there now. Norwell guy through and through. Back then, Norwell was still 4 or 5 years from even having a club team. The only public school teams back then were Hingham, Weymouth, Falmouth, a few others, off the top of my head. So when I got to Thayer in 9th grade, I'd never even, the first time I saw a lacrosse stick was at a hockey camp in middle school, up at Bowdoin College. Some Long Island kids were throwing. I didn't pick up a stick myself until spring break before, March break my freshman year, because I didn't want to play baseball with my asshole older brother anymore. Like it was literally just kind of like, I'll just play lacrosse because it's there. And that was the first time I saw kids that actually played the sport as youth players. Kind of, it was back then, it was kind of odd if you played lacrosse as a youth kid. So I come of a background of, if you're an athlete, there's a role for you. If there's a role for you, you can develop. And if you can develop, you can learn to play the sport at a high level, right? So like for me, that's my baseline, because that's how it worked when I was a kid. Athlete, if you were a high school kid and you were a good athlete, you played and you showed up for lacrosse tryouts, they'd find a role for you. If you got good at that role, you develop as a player. And if you developed as a player and increased your love of the sport, like you could get to a high level. And that's what happened with me and a lot of other players back then. Now it's totally different. I mean, it is literally, we can go into the positives and negatives of it, but the developmental arc of a player in 1993 versus 2023, for example, is, you can't even compare them.
Right. Yeah. And then shortly after that, you end up coaching at, we talked about in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And, Kyle's currently in Hopkinton. I lived part-time in Dover and Durham for 6 years. So I know Auburn, New Hampshire. We just make this a New Hampshire podcast, and we need a lot of our audience.
Let's go.
Just talking about your time at Portsmouth. And I said, Kyle jokes now that New Hampshire is a little bit years behind Massachusetts and Lacrosse now. And you were there even like a decade and a half ago. What was the New Hampshire landscape like when you first got there and starting out there, and like how the trials and tribulations you had at a smaller state lacrosse wise?
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool to be involved in the sport in New Hampshire in that time. I will say it was pretty organized. I mean, I guess it was the 2006, 2007, around that time was kind of my first year as a young guy. I was in my mid to late 20s, just over the moon excited for the challenge. I believe there was 3 divisions back then. Portsmouth, I think, was Division 3. And, it was, in my mind anyway, it was pretty high level lacrosse. I remember I called a couple of my buddies after like our first tryout. I was like, fellas, guys I played with at UVM, and I'm like, half these guys are more skilled than we were, when we showed up, and that was Portsmouth in the late 2000s. So, it was an absolute blast. I mean, I remember the battles with Laconia and Dover and St. Thomas, and it was great. And we had some success. I think we went to the state finals twice. Didn't come through either time, but it was my first kind of taste of being a high school coach, and it really drove me, in a lot of my decisions going forward.
And, I'm assuming back then, I think Dairyfield was probably still Division 3. Right now they're all different, right? Like there's still only 3 divisions, but everything's actually, next year is the year everything resets. Mass did it this year, right? Like
it's every 2 years in Mass.
Yeah, it's every 2 years in New Hampshire too. And next year it's a completely blowed up system, because Division 2 basically like evaporated. And then they had to like bring it back together and increase the cap, because it's only by size, right? So next year there's going to be double the D2 teams, and a couple D1 teams will drop, but mostly it's D3 teams going up. And the school I coach at has 300 kids. So we're always going to be in the lowest division. And that's just how that's set up, unfortunately.
Yeah, I definitely remember, like, we were a pretty large school, it's a regional school. It's Portsmouth, Rye, a couple other towns. And we just got to like tell them what division we wanted to play. I remember like we deliberately went into a lower division because it was like the second or third year we had a team. So. Yeah.
But going back into that, Chad Vesher is there now. He's a pilot. I'm always fascinated by the background of these coaches. Like I talked to him for a thing. He's like, I got to fly out in a couple minutes. I'm like, okay, you got like business? He's like, no, I'm the pilot of the plane. I'm like, what?
I didn't know this.
What's happening? New Hampshire's so funny because like it's kids, it's guys that are, it's different from Mass because a lot of the Mass guys are educators. right? They're in the system already.
Yeah.
And what I find strange is like none of them seem to work at the school, coach at the school they work at. Which like, is that by design or is that just like a perk? I don't understand. Like, I do know this, and sorry to pull back the curtain for high school coaches. I know you get paid way more in Mass than we get paid up here. That's a fact. That is crazy. I've seen some of the salaries for freshman teams. I'm like, wait. I didn't make that coaching college. Like, what is happening? The disparate economic states of Massachusetts is wild to me. Like the closer you are to Boston, the more money everyone has, obviously, but the schools have it too, which I think is fun in a way, but also disruptive. New Hampshire's not like that. And it's still not like that. Like there's coaches getting like $3,000 that are head coaches and they've been there for like 10 years. It's crazy. Like I'm sorry to say that. And I'm not saying anyone specifically, but you know that I know who you are.
Jesus, Kyle.
What? Listen, this podcast is about truth. It's about truth. I'm just saying it.
Go for it.
Let's talk a little bit more about where you went from Portsmouth and through your coaching career. Obviously having two sons that play in college now. You've gone through, you went coached at Norwell for a little bit, also at Hingham. How did those situations come about?
Well, I'm a Norwell guy kind of through and through. You know, my wife, I grew up across the street from me. We bought a house like a half mile from where we grew up. So to me, when I moved back to Norwell, I don't know what it was, 15 or 20 years ago now. The first thing I did was just go on the internet, find Norwell Youth Lacrosse and say, hey man, I'm moving back. All I want to do is coach. You know, I've got this other job that fills my day, most of my hours, but I'd love to coach. And back then it was the TPL, which is like, as you know, kind of like one of the bigger, highly competitive leagues in the youth leagues in the state, was brand new, and Norwell was trying to get into it. Right, it was maybe second year, third year, and they had like a trial, just totally coincidental. Like I called up the youth director at the time, who became a good friend of mine. But at the time, I literally cold called him, and I was like, "Hey, here's my resume. I'm moving down from Norwell. I'd love to help in any way." And he's like, "Oh, this is great. We're going to put an 8th grade team in this new league, and they want us to try it by just doing one team." So like we got like a 7th, 8th grade team into like the 8th grade division of the TPL. And it was supposed to be like our trial run, right? This is probably 2010. I don't even know. And of course we're a little lowly Norwell, and we're going against Duxbury and LS and Carter Carlisle. And I mean, it was definitely a humbling spring. But it kind of set the table for a lot of those kids. And then, of course, like just coincidentally, as life would have it, the next spring, the coach at Norwell stepped down, and they were kind of like, I had my foot in the door, and nobody else. I don't even know if anyone else interviewed for this position, but I got the gig, and it was great because that first TPL team, that a group of 7th and 8th graders, kind of became the foundation of the team. And then that TPL league that Norwell ultimately did get into, I don't know if the league specifically was the reason, but a lot of the guys that were involved in the youth organization at that time became friends of mine, and there was a ton of energy. And really the whole Norwell DNA, town lacrosse DNA changed, in those years. And we went to our first state championship game in my first year. Let's say it was 2011 or so. Of course, we had to go up against the juggernaut that was Cohasset back then. They had Jack Murphy in goal. They had Phil Pott, the midi there, I think he went to Bentley. He was total stud in there. Fogo, Keneally was unbelievable. We only lost by 2 goals, and we had a hell of a team ourselves. I actually talked to my kids who both played at Norwell. And by the way, only one's in college. One's a senior right now at Norwell.
Right.
We talk Norwell Lax all day long. I put that team, that state championship runner-up team, from 11 up against any of the teams nowadays. And we had Pat Johnston in goal, who went on to be the all-time winningest goalie in RIT. at RIT, won two national championships, All-American, the whole thing. They had senior captains, went to Bates and middle and Trinity. They had a ton. Southern New Hampshire probably had 10 college guys on that team, which back then, was a lot. So anyway, I was lucky enough to coach Norwell for 3 or 4 years. And then that ended, which we don't have time in this podcast to go through why and how. So, but then it was great because at that point I had gotten to know so many guys in the area that Coach Chaw, JT, who was kind of still a mentor and a friend of mine, was like, "Hey man, coach has got a coach. You want to come over and, be my D coordinator?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I'll be honest with you, the first time I stepped on the field as an assistant coach with a guy that I really appreciated and respected, I was kind of like, man, I don't think I'll ever be a head coach again. It's just that there's not that I would be a head coach again if it was at the right opportunity and, my heart was in it. But something about being an assistant coach, just being, not having to deal with all the other stuff and just having to coach and interact with the kids and work with the other guys. It's pretty great. And that's kind of what I've done since then. I've coached in Hingham and Thayer, 2 different runs up there with Rubior and Coach Day. And, as I told you guys before they hit record on this thing, coaching high school in the spring is like, I need it. Like my soul needs it, being a youth lacrosse director and a club lacrosse director has become in many ways my 9-to-5 job. So believe me, I love it, every minute of it, but it's not the same as, going out there and, carrying a team through a season and, high school athletes. And so, but I get the same enjoyment as being an assistant coach as I did being a head and half the headaches. So
I would say it's more enjoyable. I was also
you're preaching to the choir right now.
Yeah, I was a head coach for 6 years at a college in Division III, and I was the most miserable I was in my entire life during those 6 years. Because when you're the head coach, like everything's your fault. Like, and I mean that in a way that's not like, oh, it's not your fault when you're an assistant. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like all the responsibility of the program falls on you, even if there are circumstances no one else understands. So like, or like you lose funding. Like in college it's different. Like you lose recruiting funding, or I mean, I can talk about the school now because it doesn't exist anymore. This is Daniel Webster College. They literally like they're gone. It's apartments now. But like that was a struggle. Like every day was a struggle to get something that I needed, get something that I wanted, and forget even coaching. Like most of your life is most of your life is admin when you're a head coach, and be a club director. I would assume even more of it is admin, which I have said many times in this podcast, not my strong suit. Okay. Not something I'm very good at. So being an assistant is, I'm a head JV coach, but I'm a varsity assistant, and it's a great fit right now.
That's kind of perfect. That's what I did at Thayer the first time with Coach Rubio. I was like an assistant middle school coach, a head JV coach, and an assistant varsity coach. I'd go to Thayer at like 2 in the afternoon. I'd leave at like 6:30. Great.
But it's like a good feeling, right? Yeah. I feel like a lot of people listen to this podcast are parents. And I think that they don't get that these coaches, like, first of all, we're not compensated very fairly, but second of all, like, we're not here for that. We're here to like help your kid. Like, no one plots against your kid. I just want to like say this. And every time I'm in front of a microphone, I want to be like, I do not hate your kid. I love your kid. I don't even know him. I'm sure he's great. I never have anything against kids. Like, I don't say things against kids purposefully in this job because A, it's not worth it. And B, like, I'm just one dude. Like, I don't have like the influence of a college recruiter. That's like not what I do. And one of the things I said when I took this job is like, I'm going to be an analyst, but I'm not going to be negative, because previously in my career, I was like smashing like all sorts of player boundaries because I was covering pro guys. And I was like, okay, well, my hero is Bill Simmons. So Bill Simmons says stuff like this. Why can't I? It's just because it's lacrosse, I can't say it. That's stupid. Right. And now I get it because I'm on the other end. I'm a stepdad. I'm like trying to get a kid through youth lacrosse and see that he kind of loves it, but not really. And that struggle, I think, is like a big part of being a parent in the space. That is, I get way more now. I did not get it as a college.
No, I would say that the biggest thing that has changed me as a club director and a lacrosse coach is the perspective that I now have as a parent. Right. As a parent of lacrosse players, as a coach in general, just now having the perspective of like when you're talking to parents or even when you're coaching kids and you're thinking about the way the parents are, translating that and all that stuff, like, but also as a club director, like the first 10 years I was a club director, all I did was bitch about parents that like, didn't read their emails or like complained on the sideline by themselves or whatever. And then I got a kid playing club soccer and I'm not reading the emails and I'm bitching on the sideline about his playing time. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, and so the longer I do it, like there's a lot of parts of me that know that like, I'm not quite, the coach I was. There's elements of me as a coach that I just can't reproduce in the 50-year-old me that I had when I was 30. But I think the full the full character, coach character in me is way more evolved now than I ever was before, and it's mostly just because of the fact that I've had kids that have gone through it. And I try to always hold on to that, especially when I'm having conversations with parents. It's really helped in that way. So,
yeah. Me, Kyle, JV coaches. I've never once coached youth. That is a patience that I do not have. And I just commend every single person that steps on a youth field because I just could not do it. Did that kind of happen like right as you were having kids, or was there a bit of a reprieve? Like how old were they? Like what was the grace period of between when you were starting to coach youth and how old your kids were? Was it like kind of coinciding, or was there a little bit of an overlap there?
No, I was coaching way before. I knew I was going to be a coach really when I was in college, right? I just knew I had an aptitude for it and I really enjoyed it. I did camps in the summer, all that kind of stuff. And then I kind of, the best coach I ever had was Jake Diamond. He was a soccer coach at Thayer. And back in the 90s, they would let you graduate. You would walk with graduation, but I had a couple of credits that I had to finish in the fall after I graduated. So I was living in Norwell. And for that fall, I was taking classes at UMass Boston and I was coaching soccer with Coach Diamond. And it was the first time I'd ever coached like high school kids and a full season, like as the head assistant throughout the whole year. And I was so enthralled by it. I was just, coaching with like this legend who literally every chance he got would tell me how great I was doing and how good I was at it. So I kind of ended that fall thinking I have to figure out a way to keep coaching in my life for the rest of my life. Right. And it's actually a big reason why, like a lot of guys back then, .com was still flying high. So I graduated college and with everybody else, I went and got a 9-to-5 sales job for an internet company selling banner ads. And, literally within 24 months, within 2 years, I had to quit because I was like, I got to coach and I can't be staring at a computer, making cold calls to California or Europe or wherever all day long. I've got to get on a field. So it's, it literally that early, I quit my job and I moved up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. My parents had recently kind of empty nested and moved up there. And within a year, I opened a deli and convenience store on State Street in Portsmouth. No idea what I was doing. And, not the number one reason I did it, but part on the list of reasons I did it was I needed to control my own schedule so I should coach. So I was probably 23, 24 when I started doing that. And I started the Portsmouth Youth Lacrosse program. I not myself, there was a guy, Bray's last name was Brasseth, Pete Brasseth. He came to me, he had a kid, his kid and a bunch of his friends wanted to learn to play. And I met him at the store and I was like, yeah, let's do it. So literally from that point on, I was coaching youth lacrosse or high school lacrosse, more or less a large part of every year going forward. So to answer your question directly, I was always involved with youth. Even when I was coaching at Portsmouth, I was basically running the youth program too. And when I came back to Norwell, obviously my first like foray in Norwell youth lacrosse was with the 8th grade team. But then the next year when I got the varsity job, the first thing I did was start offering Norwell camps and clinics in the summer and fall, really kind of selfishly to start to build a pipeline to the high school. It wasn't like a business plan back then in any way, shape, or form. But, you start there, and then you start having more kids that want to play in the fall and more kids that want to do tournaments in the summer. And, it just kind of evolved from there. But I was coaching youth lacrosse, when I had like my oldest in a baby Bjorn on the front of my chest, on my front of my chest. So it was really cool, that arc where it was like when you start doing it, when your kids aren't really involved and your wife's mad at you because you're taking time away from taking care of them as babies, to then when they're involved and you're like coaching them and directly involved in the development, to now when they're actually like, accomplishing their goals and playing in college. And so that full arc is wild. I mean, it kind of encompassed the before, the during, and the after.
You mentioned like John Totter in his podcast, and he's a great example of the Hingham youth to high school pipeline is just maybe the best in the state of how he does that. And it's just a good reminder of all these high school coaches kind of getting more involved in youth programs. It's only going to benefit you way down the line. He runs a fantastic transitional periods when they start as kindergartners to when they are seniors. Like they are there through and through. And he is the gold star shining example of how to integrate people from the youth to the high school. I just wanted to give him that prop because he does an amazing job over there.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. I mean, everyone, I often get people asking me like, is this person a good coach or is this person a good coach? And what do you think of this coach? My ranking scale is not, I don't really prioritize when I'm thinking about a guy, if, how good of a coach he is, high school especially. I don't really care so much about X's and O's. You know what I mean? It's almost like the longer you do this, the more you realize like there's 100 different ways to set up an offense or run a defense. And some guys like some better than others. There's philosophies, there's all that. But the reality is most guys that coach at the high school have a clue how to coach the crop. To me, it's about how high is your give a shit? Like, what is your off the field? How much do you care? Like, and JT, like there's not even, I guess Brian Vaughn would be really close in terms of, the connection to youth and how much he cares. But like when a 9th grader gets to Hingham High, like JT already like knows that they already have a relationship. And it's not just like a relationship from a summer camp in 8th grade. Like, it's literally like he's coached them all the way from like kindergarten or 1st grade. And he's amazing in that way. The whole coaching staff over there, McCavanagh, JT, all of them. And they always work like hand in hand with the youth directors. It really is like, and Hingham and Lincoln Sudbury are like, they are really a shining example. But I'll be honest, Owen, it's tough, man. Like it almost, you have to have that kind of like 365 days a year kind of like methodology. You need an administration that supports you. There's Hingham High, the athletic and academic administration at that school. Like they support athletics. They understand how important it is, but there's a lot of public schools, as you probably know, like they don't see athletics in that way. They see it as an extracurricular activity that, guys that are like super motivated, super into it, coaching off the field and on, demanding more of their players year round, or reaching down to the youth and really pushing that, or, those kind of things get a lot of guys in trouble. So you have to give JT credit, but you also have to give like the administration credit, because I know a lot of guys that, me included, who, have learned the hard way that every administration thinks of athletics and lacrosse a little bit differently. And if you fall out of line with their view of, how much work you should be doing and how much you should be expecting of your players, and whether playing on that team is a right or a privilege, and that you earn, like all of those things, you have to make sure that you stay in line with what your administration wants and believes in. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to touch that hot iron because that's the kind of mood I'm in today. I totally agree with everything you just said. I experienced it probably actually for like only a couple times at Hopkinton where I don't know the best way to say this. Owen, you know this. You've met me in person many times.
Many times.
I'm an intense individual. Is that fair?
Accurate.
I am not different when I coach. But I've been asked to be different a couple times. And I adapt and I'll switch, but I'm me. I'm not, I don't know how to coach with no emotion. I don't know how to like kind of have accountability be a third thing. Right. And the best example I can give of this is, and again, this is not a negative thing. It's just a difference of style. The head coach at Hopkinton has been there forever. He grew up, he was on the first teams ever. He won state championships. He coached state championships. He was an assistant before he was the head coach, all that stuff. Homegrown dude. He does this thing that enrages me. Every time it's hot, he sends a kid to go buy popsicles. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, we have playoffs. And he's like, part of our culture. And I was like, I can't get on board with it. Like, the kid's always like, Coach, what when? I was like, no. Like, how long are we going to eat these popsicles?
Only winners get popsicles.
I know it's not even win. It's not about winning or losing. It's about like the intensity drop. Like, I'll be in like a huge, like we'll have like a great fast break drill. And like, I'll be like, okay, here's the second look for this guy. And then like, we finally hit it. I'm like, yes, let's go right into 6-on-6. And then like a kid rolls up with the popsicles. I'm like, son of a, like, you know what I mean? It's the energy change and transfer that like I was a college coach for 12 years. I've only been a high school assistant JV head coach for 6. So like, I look at it like, it's like when you break up with a longtime girlfriend, it takes double the amount to recover. You know what I mean? I'm not there yet. I haven't recovered from needing to be the battery. Does that make sense? Like, the team battery begins and ends with me, and hopefully they fill themselves up, right? But to start a game with high school kids, youth kids even, like their energy is just chaotic. But high school kids, like, to be the spark that starts the engine, to be the key that turns it, is something I don't know how to stop doing. And I've had some problems with it lately. And I don't think it's from motivation. I think it's just like, this group of kids that I have is not wired like the last 5. And I don't know why. Like, my brain goes, why don't you see this part or that part? I think like being a coach now is dealing with that frustration in a way that I never expected. And then I coached youth this last winter and this fall. I ran my own program at a gym in Methuen for youth kids. And then I also did a skills and drills for my hometown not my hometown, but the town I live in now, which is Windham, New Hampshire. And the patience required for both is the popsicle. So like, I am so fascinated to talk to you about how your mentality changes when you coach high school forever and you revere it and you played in college and then you have to deal with youth. Wow.
It's so much more nuanced than that, though. It's not even just youth in high school. Like, you know, at Kings, we have 13 youth teams right now, right? So like our biggest grade has 3 or 4 teams, and our youngest grade has like 1 team, right? So you've got the different ages, but you also have the different competitive levels, right? Which is a big part of club lacrosse now. And you've got, we might have a 3-hour window for practice, in the winter where, you start with 3rd graders and you finish with, 8th graders. And it is a constant adjustment of philosophy, of delivery, of everything, practice when. So you get kind of better at it as it goes. I would say the only time I get in trouble is in games. Like in practice, I'm really good with younger kids, kind of always have been. I'm good with youth players. I'm good with high school players. So like in practice, I think I'm like, I could do it for the most part. Sometimes a little, munchkin will drive me crazy or something, and I'll have to take a deep breath. But for the most part, where I get in trouble is in games. You know what I mean? Like where you just like, that ground ball isn't going to win itself, and you've got some fourth grader, talking to his buddy in the stands, and and you have to make sure that you're constantly reminding yourself like what age, what level you're coaching.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd like to say I've mastered it. I certainly haven't. I will say this one bit of advice for anybody out there that is always start. Like if you have a window, a 3-4 hour window, always start with the youngest and then with the oldest. That fourth hour, if you go backwards, you are not going to be mentally or physically ready to handle the younger grade. You got to start with the young ones, because that's when you're kind of ready. And then it just gets easier as you go, as you move on.
Just going to a little personal anecdote, you talked about a little bit. Your kids obviously play at Norwell. We played at Northwest. We played Norwell in the Chapter Cup Finals a couple of years ago when your son was a freshman, and he scored like 4 goals. And I was like, who is this kid? He's like 4 foot nothing, and he's spinning my defenseman in circles, getting around. I'm like, who is? And then he scored like 5 goals in the state championship game as a freshman, and I was like, who is this kid? Where did he come from? And it's just every year he's gotten better and better and better. But I'll never forget that first time I played against you guys. I was just like, what is going on?
It's funny. We don't have to talk about him too much, but he's a special little guy. He's quick, really, really small. For all the small guys out there, he was 5 feet. He was 5 feet, 100 pounds as a freshman, right? So, but the best line anybody's ever had was his first game. We were at Cohasset, and it was his first game of his high school career. Now we're literally like, we just wanted him to make the team, right? His brother was a senior. That's the year that Johnny Mullen was the face-off guy. Ryan Daly. These were his idols. These were his older brother's friends, and he just wanted to make the team, right? So he makes the team. We go into that first game, and we don't even know. He has no idea if it's going to play. And going out to the opening face-off, the coach Stoltz says, "Yeah, McGuirk, you're at attack, right?" And he was like now, right? So he goes out and he plays. I think they lost by a goal. I don't even remember. But after the game, I see one of the refs who I get to know all these guys, and he looks at me and he goes, "That's your kid?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Dude, he did great. That was wild." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, man." Like whatever. He's like, "It's funny, McGuirk. I was talking to I think it was Franny was the other guy. It's like I was talking to Franny. And I go, dude, it must be this kid's birthday or something. What are they doing? Starting him out. Like he was so little and so out of place that the joke the guy told to his referee was, this kid's birthday or something, But yeah, we look back on that year. It was such a great year as a dad to have both your boys, and they ended up winning the state championship. And Jake had a great year. It was that was, I'd say it all the time, but like, I don't need it. The fact that I had that spring, I'm good. Whatever else happens is gravy. Like, it's such a grind, but to be able to enjoy that spring was pretty wild.
That is the most mass ref thing I've ever heard.
Dude, these guys are great.
They're all like ancient, and they're just like, they all say the same joke.
Yeah.
All the way through their entire life. Like, yeah, definitely. I've heard that before. And because like I never coached high school in mass, but like I go to all these tournaments in the summer and it's mass refs. Like I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like,
they all sound the same. Yeah.
I work for New England Lacrosse Journal. They're like, you taking notes? I'm like, yes. For who?
It is a special community. I was part owner of an indoor sports complex for a few years down in Plymouth, and we ran leagues. So that was when I really went from like getting to know these guys like on the sideline, like during a game or after, to actually like, getting to know them. I mean, they are. It is a wild, cool, different kind of thing. Especially the old school guys have been doing it for so long. They know each other. That they're on the club circuit all summer. They literally do like contribute a lot to what the New England lacrosse scene, like not just on the field. I mean, it's obvious. Like I write this big emails before every like season where we play tournaments. I'm like, look, everybody, please understand, like refs are going to make mistakes, but you can't yell at them because we need, like, we're running out of refs, good and bad.
Running out. Absolutely.
Like, if you have two choices here, you can have your kid play lacrosse games with a ref that maybe struggles in some areas, or you could not have a lacrosse game. So like leave them alone. But so more than just what they do on the field. I mean, they really do contribute to the whole ethos of it all. I love seeing the guys out all the time, and they care about all the kids and the guy. It's a great fraternity. So I don't think I'll ever be part of it. No, I don't think I'd fit in very well, but it's fun being an observer of it and peripherally involved. Those guys are wild.
Yeah. One of my friends is James Riley, who I coached with at Emerson, and he is at Brewster now as administrator, but he was the head of New Hampshire referee assigning for a while. And this dude would recruit me every year. I'm like, no. And now I'm like, it's probably more money, but no. Like I just go, no. I saw, and I think I've told this story a couple of times. I don't know if I told it on the podcast, but so we had a game earlier this year. We ended up winning the game, but in the middle of the game, the ref recognizes me from me being a maniac in college as a college coach. And he goes, "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, I'm coaching. I'm running the box, because he heard me first and was like, "Can't be him." And then I saw him turn and stare. And I'm like, "Hey, hi." And he's like, literally like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, just coaching high school." He's like, "I don't want to hear anything." And I was like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I will not speak to you at all." And after the game, we ended up, having a comeback, and we won. And he sees me and he gets in front of me and he goes, "Good job." And he like shook my hand. And I was like, all right. Because I didn't feel good about the game, but that made me feel better. Right. Like, even though we won, I was like, oh, all right. Well, at least I wasn't, offensive like I have been.
The best guys not only know the rules and call a good game. I mean, everyone has some level of proficiency calling a good game, the longer you do it. Right. But the best guys are the ones that you can really get after, and they understand what, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you can, they let you have some room, right? And then they'll give it back a little bit. And at the end of the game, it's all good. Like, so there's really, as a coach, that's what you want, right? You don't want a guy that, is going to have hurt feelings if you say something, right? If you're trying to work for a call or something. So I think at the high school level, especially, you get a lot of those guys get it. And it can be, kind of flat out fun to coach when they're out on the field. But some of the youth guys, I don't know, they got to have thicker skin, or maybe I got to stop yelling at them. I don't know.
Well, what I've noticed just in my experience in New Hampshire is because there's such a shortage. By the way, Mass has the most refs because they have the most teams in this region, more than Connecticut, even more than Maine and Vermont put together. So they send the Mass refs out as like fill if it needs to happen. But what I've seen this year is older, experienced refs paired with clearly new refs.
Yes.
And
I had one like that a couple weeks ago.
I'm sorry. The new guys, whoa. Like the definition for slashes is and hits to the head, and all these things that we're told in the meetings are crazy. Like, I'm like, I'll have a guy who call everything, which is fine. I'd rather have you call everything than call nothing. And my entire bench looks like a MASH unit. Like, I just want everything to be above board. And it's not a complaint. It's just more of an observation that, like, the new guys call way less. And you kind of have to, as a coach, be like, okay, what side is he on? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's my part of my preparation now. Is like,
there's a feel out period.
All right, here's this guy. And it's also early in the season, and they'll get better as it goes. I don't want to end the podcast before I ask you about youth lacrosse in general, right? You work for a club team, you help develop kids, you've worked for public schools, help develop kids. What, besides expectation from parents, what is the biggest difference between those two entities in your
Which two?
mind? Public, like kids playing public youth and kids playing club youth.
All right. Well, that's we would have our own podcast, I think, and I could go on and on about this.
Answer,
I mean, I guess I would say this. I don't think parents have changed that much. I don't like the argument that says parents are so crazy these days, like blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't know. I kind of remember the 80s and playing hockey and baseball and soccer and seeing some crazy shit on the sidelines, right? And dads that lost their minds, right? So I don't think parents are much different than they've always been. I just think that if you're a parent and you're trying to navigate your way through youth lacrosse with a player that has some level of enthusiasm, some level of ability, and then trying to navigate how to feed those levels of enthusiasm and ability with the offerings that are in front of you, it's harder than it's ever been, I think, for a parent, because I'm a huge proponent of town lacrosse. I literally will tell anybody that will listen. I think I'm probably the strongest proponent of club lacrosse as it relates to the bigger clubs in the area. I do feel like town lacrosse is critical to the development of our players and the overall community we exist in, lacrosse community we exist in. I will tell anybody that will listen, club lacrosse is really good at doing a lot of things, but there's some things that town lacrosse does that we simply can't do. And personally, I value those things, and in some ways, and certainly in the spring, a lot higher than what club can do. But, the reality is there's boots on the ground. Like if you're only playing town nowadays and you have a high level of enthusiasm and some ability and you want to get the most out of both of those things, it's hard to get to where you want to get to if you don't play more than just with your town rec team in the spring. And it's a moving target. Sometimes are more organized than others and have more offerings than others. But for the most part, if you're generalizing, unless you are a elite athlete, like kind of a top 5% or 3 or 5% athlete who just picks a stick up in April and puts it down in June, it's going to be hard for you to kind of keep up. So what I focus on the club side is try to figure out how to offer a club development offering, programming model on the annual calendar that prioritizes value, flexibility, and town and multisports, right? So it's like when I think about the family that is paying me to put his kid into our club, it's really easy to get triggered by making sure that the kid is, on the right team or that your top teams are going to the right tournaments. And I think a lot of parents kind of value those things too much. Whereas I kind of look at it and say, how can we get this kid as much lacrosse development opportunity around his sports schedule and his town schedule in the spring? How can we give him as much opportunity as we can at the lowest cost possible with as much flexibility as we can? And it's really hard to do, and it does cost money. But I'd like to think that at the end of the day, that's the right way to do it at youth, where it's like we want to solve as many problems for as many types of players as we can, until it starts to be a detriment to our club or to the other players. But I think we've got a pretty good mesh of it down here where, we really do. We're big enough that we can offer a ton of different days on the calendar, days of the week that you can train with around your sports schedules. But we're small enough that like you have the same coaches all year round and year over year, and we know you. And so I don't know. That's a long way to answer your question. I think the sky is not falling like some people want to say. Club is not destroying town, and town is not going to die anytime soon. I think every town's a little different. Every situation is a little different. But at the end of the day, club has a role now. How big of a role kind of depends on the player and the club and the town. But the reality is club plays a role, and you just have to keep as many things as you can in perspective and make the best decisions you can. But I think in Massachusetts especially, and I know a lot of these guys that are running clubs in other areas, like Maryland, doesn't even have town lacrosse anymore. But I think in Massachusetts especially, there's a little bit of a flow going on right now between town and club, and town is now Saturdays, club is playing on most town is Sundays. Club now has a little Saturday league, and everyone's seen, it's working pretty well the last few years. And I'd like to think optimistically that it will continue.
It's a great place to end the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. And
hey, Owen, are you guys still in the Chowder Cup next week?
Yep.
All right, I'll see you there.
See you then.
Loaded this year. Loaded.
Very loaded.
Can you guys beat Mansfield?
We'll see.
We'll see. I think we opened with Mansfield, actually. We'll see.
Yep.
All right.
Good luck.
Thanks again, Coach. And thanks again for listening to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast. For Owen Hart, I'm Kyle Devitt. See you next time.